Endangered species. These species are all endangered. They are seriously at risk of extinction. Without efforts targeted specifically to save them, they will be wiped off the face of the earth. They will become extinct. Extinct, no longer in existence, that has ended or died out, no longer in use, obsolete. There are many worthy campaigns to save our environment, save the rainforest, and save animals and plant life on the verge of extinction. But have we overlooked another group that is on the verge of extinction? Endangered, saving Black fathers to save Black sons. Have we overlooked this group because we believe they're not worthy of our efforts to save? Or are we ignorant of a serious problem in our society? Or are we callous and just don't care? In this short video, we will explore a problem from different angles. We will look at the research and we'll talk with some fathers and we'll discuss solutions. I hope by the end of this video, you'll be moved to join the fight and become part of the solution. We live in a society today where fathers are quickly becoming obsolete. The definition of obsolete is to cause to be or become obsolete by replacing it with something new. Father-led homes are being replaced by homes led by single mothers and other new family dynamics such as two-mother or two-father homes. As we look at statistics, we learn that is most true in the African American community. In her book, Growing Up, Issues Affecting America's Youth, Barbara Wexler talks about the new family dynamic. Her research shows that in 2010, more than 54% of Black children come from fatherless homes, in comparison to 30% of Hispanic, 21% of white children, and 12% of Asian children. The U.S. Census Bureau reports the number of African American children growing up without fathers is actually increasing. As of July 2012, it was reported that 57.6% of children, Black children, are living absent their biological fathers. More and more in the Black community, many women are choosing to father their children alone and by multiple fathers. There are many who argue that children fare well enough without their fathers. Many of us know Black men who, against the odds, have come to achieve a measure of success. But I submit to you, we shouldn't look at individual cases to assess a problem. We should look at the Black community as a whole and see how fatherlessness has impacted us overall. Let's first look at some research on fatherlessness in the U.S. from the National Center for Fathering. 85% of all youth locked up in prison are from fatherless homes. 71% of all pregnant teens are from fatherless homes. 71% of all U.S. high school dropouts come from fatherless homes. 85% of all youth who are diagnosed with behavioral disorders come from fatherless homes. 90% of all homeless and runaway children come from fatherless homes. 80% of all youth in psychiatric hospitals come from fatherless homes. And 65% of juveniles who commit suicide are from fatherless homes. The U.S. State's Department of Health and Human Services reports that fatherless children are at a dramatically greater risk of drug and alcohol abuse. The Journal of Marriage and Family reports that there is significantly more drug use among children who do not live with their mother and father. Children who live with their mothers are 4 times more likely to live in poverty. Children with their fathers in the home perform better in school. Children living with married biological parents have significantly fewer behavioral problems. Children of single-parent homes are more than twice as likely to commit suicide. For the first time in United States history, Black children have surpassed white children in suicide rates. CNN reported in May 2005 that suicide rates among white children have actually declined, while suicide rates among Black children have doubled, especially among Black boys, who now represent the group that is most affected by suicide. As we hear these astounding statistics and we zero in on the Black community, which is most impacted by fatherlessness, we can see why it's no surprise that the majority of men on death row are Black men. Sentencing Project reports that, as it currently stands, we can expect that 1 out of every 3 black males will go to prison at least once in their lifetime, in comparison with 1 in 6 Latinos and 1 in 17 white boys. Look at the young boys in your community, in your family. Can you live with these statistics? Many will argue that disparities in the criminal justice system factor into these statistics, and they certainly do. There is unfairness in our criminal justice system. But the fact still remains that black boys left without fathers will more often than not delve into delinquent and criminal behavior unless someone steps in. The case for black fathers in the home. Black fathers who stay in the home, who live in the home, are a powerful influence on their sons. Interestingly, research shows that black fathers who are present in the home are the most engaged of all races studied. The Center for Disease Control study shows that black men who reside with their children are overall more engaged than white, Hispanic, or Asian fathers. I personally spoke with several black men from different backgrounds to understand from a black male perspective the importance of fathers in the home.
My dad was very structured, and I remember a time where I had been getting in kind of some trouble, and I remember this particular time we had gotten in trouble for egging a house, and I thought I was going to be, that was it, because my dad was very military background and stuff like that, and I was shocked that I didn't get in that much trouble as far as for egging, and he took a different approach as far as the discipline. He ended up signing me up for football at that time, where that was out of the norm. My dad would normally, the belt would have came out and I would have been in trouble and I would have been on restriction. So I just remember that incident as far as like him taking a different approach and seeing like, okay, he's starting to have too much energy, he's having too much spare time, and he was able to sign me up for football, which was significant because we had just moved to Riverside from Long Beach, and I had some friends around the neighborhood and stuff like that, so I was able to play football at that time.
Well, he taught me how, it was important to be honest, and to be caring and sympathetic to others, respect my elders, and don't be a bully. Care for those that's less fortunate, and just be respectful to the law, to policemen, and just carry myself in a respectable manner at all times, and that's was something I really, learned and stuck to that. It helped me in, interacting with people, with my classmates, and because I always conducted myself as, that person that really, cared and really wanted to be accepted and wanted to help others.
Black fathers who are present in the home taught their sons values and morals that have stuck with them throughout their lifetime. Black fathers are generally the disciplinarians and encourage their boys to avoid juvenile delinquency that leads to interaction with the police. Black fathers, understanding the biases in our country and in the juvenile system, warn their sons to lead exemplary lives and obey the police so they aren't likely to be detained. Without that guiding presence of their fathers, black sons are vulnerable and left to their own devices, and they will most certainly fall prey to the ills of society and eventually become a burden on this society.
Growing up in Compton and in inner city, I was exposed to that stuff all around us. I mean, we lived in places, my mother was the only one working, so we had to live in places that weren't that great as far as neighborhoods. And I remember growing up in one big portion of my childhood, we lived in an area that was between two rival gangs. And so we saw stuff all the time. We saw, you know, different muggings and beatings and gang fights and things. And we also, you know, saw people doing drugs and exposed to drugs. I had people offering me drugs, you know, walking to school and things like that. So all that element was around us growing up. So I think that if I had a father around at the time, it would have made a big difference, because, you know, the only thing that really kept us from getting into that stuff was my mom, and she kept us in the house. You know, I think that was the only thing she could think to do, was to just stay in the house all day, don't go outside. You know, and that was kind of our thing, especially in the summertime when we weren't at school. We just stayed in the house all day. And I know that was her way of keeping us protected and shielded from that stuff. But it didn't give us an education on it or how to deal with it, because we still saw things. Like I said, when I was walking to school, I know a person approached me to sell me some drugs once. So, but yeah, a father being in our home would have been able to influence that and to teach us the right way to go and to keep us from experiencing those things firsthand, and also, you know, not just shielding us from it, but teaching us that how to deal with it, you know, if we were approached by it or whatever.
The neighborhood I stayed in, it was gangs all around it, drugs all around it, and my mom's always told us that life is about choices, and you have to live with the choices you make. And I just decided to not be around it, and sometimes my friends were gangbangers, so I was around them. So I just pick and chose my times, because it's hard to be away from gangbangers, because if you're friends and you stay in a neighborhood, there's no way to get around it. So you just pick your times.
This isn't just a black problem, but it is most pervasive in the black community, and it affects our entire society, because black youth who fall into delinquency will impact every area of society, as crime doesn't know race, social status, or gender. Exceptions to the rule. There are many black men who grew up without their fathers, and by the grace of God, they have made it. But most of them are very aware that they are the exception and not the rule.
Like I said, my mom's, she raised us to be independent and not to depend on anybody. Mm-hmm. So I was very confident in myself. Mm-hmm. Okay. I think all in all, everything turned out good without one. It would probably be nice to have one, but I didn't.
As a graphic artist, as a multimedia designer, being able to obtain that and to go to work every day doing the things that I love to do is probably my greatest accomplishment there. And not having my father growing up, it took me a long time to get to that point. And it would have been great to have a male role model, someone to help guide me in the decisions I made, like what jobs to take or what school to go to. And I know other people, even my peers that I work with, who are, 10, 12, maybe even 15 years younger than me, but they are doing the exact same job that I'm doing. And I'm there, and I praise God for being able to have that job. But at the same time, I know it does play in my mind that, they're in their 30s and I'm in my 40s, and I know that I could have gotten to that point a lot sooner if I had the proper guidance growing up.
These men should be applauded for their success. However, many of them wonder how much further could they have gotten if they had the influence of their father. And most still acknowledge the void the absence of their father has created.
You know, when growing up, playing with friends and stuff, and I would see kids with their fathers, and I didn't have one, so that was probably the only time. But other than that, that was pretty much it. You know, the only time I really felt the void when I seen other people with their fathers. Mm-hmm. But that was pretty much it.
I have to say, in my early years in elementary, I had friends that had fathers. All of my friends, actually, they had fathers in the home. Whether they were good fathers or not, or participant in their lives, it was, their presence was there. And I could see that. I could see that when I would go over to their houses, and I would see them interacting with their fathers, and sometimes the fathers would take us places and do things. So that was a big part of my childhood, knowing that I was missing that, you know. And also growing up, as you learn things like riding a bike or you know, hitting a baseball, or you know, things like that, that a father would teach his son, I didn't have that. So that was always a deficit. You know, all my friends could play and do all these things that I couldn't do, and I ended up having to teach myself. And so that was really, really clear to me that there was something missing from my life.
Fatherlessness is a problem of the more recent future because of declining Christian values, especially in the Black community. 50 years ago, women wouldn't think of fathering children alone. It was understood that children needed fathers. Young girls were guided and protected by their fathers so that they understood it wasn't good to father children outside of marriage, and it was unheard of to father children by multiple men outside of marriage. It is my aim and mission to encourage a return to God's values, to remind young people of the blessings from marriage. It may seem old-fashioned, but let's encourage young people to get married before having children. All experts agree, secular and otherwise, that two-parent homes with a mother and a father, just as God designed it, is best for well-adjusted children. God's way will always be the best way. Our values as Christians tell us to learn to do what is right, seek justice, defend the oppressed, take up the cause of the fatherless, plead the case of the widow, Isaiah 1:17. And God specifically says to fathers, "Fathers, do not exasperate your children. Instead, bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord," Ephesians 6:4. We have a responsibility as Americans. We have a responsibility as Christians. We have a responsibility as members of the human race. Let's help fathers be fathers. Only a father can teach a son how to be a father. Let's encourage young Black fathers to stay in their children's lives. Let's encourage those who aren't yet fathers. Let's teach them the importance of considering the role before they enter it and understand the value of doing it God's way.
I remember when my daughter was younger, she was about 2 years old. It was just a great time because 2, 3 years old, they have that personality. They know, you know, you can tell them to put their pants on and they put their pants on by themselves or whatever, but they're still dependent on you. And I remember one time I'm watching my daughter sleep and she was just peaceful. And I remember saying like, there's no way that I could ever leave my daughter. Whatever the situation is with her mom, there's no way that my relationship is with my daughter is dependent on the mother. And I said, I don't see how someone could leave this situation. And I know people do leave situations, but it's important to stay in the life of a male as well as a female to have that structure and to show them what a man should be. I think it's important, and I think it's the next step is for a person that sees someone that doesn't have a father to be a father figure, even if that is not your son. I think it's important as well.
The status of a head of household, he can, they tend to listen to the father more so than the mother. And if a father, just a new father, he's not really that, not sure how to, how that family network works and how the structure that he's been appointed, as the leader of this family, if he doesn't know how to do that, how to love and how to care for a child, then he could go. There's parenting classes that he could take. He's new this is a new thing to him, so he can search his soul, and say, well, like this, like what can I do to make my family cohesive and strong, and how can I be, direct my family in the right direction and bring up my children. Well, if he can't find that in his, through a moral obligation and a moral compass, if he can't find that, then he should seek outside help, and knowing that if the child, he and the mother, that's the only lifeline that children have, the only real course of direction. And if that's absent, then what happens to the child? So just caring and just loving and wanting the best for your children, that's and just do your very, very best. That's all a child can ask for. That's, they deserve your love and your concern, and just to be there for them.
God has designed fatherhood for a very special purpose, to make himself known to the world. When we go against God's purpose and design, we can only expect that chaos will ensue. God has ordained marriage and fatherhood to be a reflection of who He is. But no man can truly understand fatherhood or what God expects of him as a father unless he knows God, the Father Himself. So the most important cause we can advocate for is for you to come to know the Father of all fathers.
I think the first thing I would tell someone in that position is to first seek God, to seek a relationship with God. I mean, that's where you're going to understand the true role of what a father is supposed to be, is understanding how our Father in heaven is and what He does and how He raises us and takes care of us and treats us. And that's a huge commitment, and it takes that kind of knowledge and understanding to really grasp what that means, what it means to be a father. It's not just something you can read in a book or, ask one or two people. It's something that you have to grow into. And day one, you're not going to know what to do. So first and foremost, I think I would tell them to seek a relationship with God, and that through his word, you'll understand what he's called us to do. And that gives you a set of standards to live up to. And then from there, I would tell them, the second thing I guess I would tell them is to stay. We see too many examples of African-American young men that are just leaving. They have a baby, they do that part, and then when it comes to raising that child, they're not there. They move on to another situation. And so I would tell that person, stay. This child is your responsibility. You've done the part of making it. Now is your turn to do the part of raising it. That child is not going to know what to do and how to live and how to stay out of trouble without somebody guiding that person. And it is that father's responsibility to do that. So I would tell them to stay. It's a long, sometimes unforgiving role to be a father, but the rewards are great because you have a direct impact on the life that is going to come out of that young child, what they're going to be, who they're going to be, and that's huge. That is a huge responsibility, and it doesn't stop when they get to be 20 years old or 30. It's a lifetime commitment. And that's the third thing I would tell them is that don't give up. It's a lifetime commitment. You're gonna make mistakes, you're gonna get things wrong, but stay there and keep working at it and keep trying. And if they have some positive role models or someone that they know, maybe a friend who has a father, to seek some advice from that person, or maybe someone at their church or school who might be a good parent, seek some advice from them as well to see how to deal with and how to handle some of the things that they're going to be faced with. But the biggest challenge is to stay there and to continue to keep trying to raise that child and to be a presence in that child's life, regardless of what situations you go through with the mama, baby mama, the birth mother. Stay there and do the job you were called to do.